Hi there. In this video, we'll be covering how to leave a legacy for your family. Legacies are so impactful and so powerful, especially when we can pass them from one generation to the next. I've had the honor of helping numerous families tell their stories and put them down onto the page in books. It's been so meaningful to help them and just awesome to see the impact that those family stories can have. Looking back can be such a meaningful experience, not just for future relatives, but for yourself as well. By the end of this video, you will learn how to tap into your family's story, how to gather research and interviews, and how to ensure that this story gets preserved for future generations. And stay tuned until the end of the video for an opportunity I really think you're going to enjoy. Let's dive in. What is the story of your family? What is the story of them coming to the place where they're living, of establishing themselves, of finding their way, of finding success? What's the story of one generation to the next? These stories matter so much. And it's so easy to lose sight of those stories, as people pass away, as people get older and lose, memory or the ability to tell stories. These things can be lost over time. So it's so important to document them while you can. I think about a family I'm currently working with, and I've been working with them for about a year now and telling their story, and it's been so impactful. It started in the early 1900s when they first came to America, the relatives did, and just establishing themselves and finding success over time, looking at the struggles that our ancestors have faced on the journey to success is so impactful. It's so important for us. It's tough to really know who you are if you don't understand the people that came before you and the struggles they faced and the challenges and, the path that they wanted you to be on for your life, from our parents on backward, grandparents, great-grandparents, on and on and on. And nowadays there's so much information available to us that wasn't available a generation ago. I think of Ancestry.com as a great example. There's census records dating back all the way. There's immigration records. There's city directories and school yearbooks. There's so many different ways to find information today that didn't exist back then. Newspapers.com is another great resource. Previously, you needed to go to a library or some other place where there was access to newspaper archives, and you needed to go through microfiche and reels and other different ways to gather the information. You had to go through giant books, these giant books full of newspaper clippings or clip files or something. You needed to go through some research to be able to find this information, and a lot of this research wasn't readily available. I can go online today on newspapers.com and get access to a paper from 100 or more years ago, search for a specific name, find exactly where that name is on the page, have it ready to go right there within a matter of seconds, when 10, 15 years ago, I would need to travel for hours to a library and flip through this and this and this and filter through the reels. It's changed the way that we do research today for ancestry research. And it's so meaningful to see that. It's so meaningful to see how easy, it's not easy, but how much easier it's becoming to be able to track information down that a generation ago was lost to us. But again, documenting stories. So the papers and the pages and research tell one thing. What about living interviews? What about interviews with those who are still here? And, being able to capture those things is so meaningful. When I was, again, going back to the research project I've been working on now for about a year, and it's been so special to be able to talk to some of the relatives in this family and find out their experiences and kind of bounce off my research from them and say, okay, what about this? I found this newspaper clipping. What does this mean? Going through letters from the 1920s back and forth between a future husband and wife. Going through those things provides context for who we are today. And being able to document those stories from interviews, record them, preserve them, and keep them. With this family I've been working with, they actually recorded a video of a lot of relatives talking 5, 6, 7 years ago. Some of them are no longer with us, but yet they preserve these stories in video form, and they preserve these stories in other ways, 8mm films and other things that make it possible for me as a researcher to be able to dig deeper and feel like other people are being brought into the story even though I can't interview them. And then talking to the people who are still here and getting their insights. So it's really a matter of balancing research, interviews, just gathering as much information as you can. But what do you do with all this research? It's one thing to interview people and just sit on it. It's one thing to gather this information or these video files or audio files. What do you do with it? Turning it into a book is a great idea, is a great concept. It's such a great way to document and capture those stories and tell it in a narrative way. Tell it in a really interesting, meaningful way. What do you want to do with this information? It's not just gathering it. You want to have it. You want to be able to share it. With your children or your children's children. You want to have this information readily available to you. And yet it's so easily lost. If we don't make a concerted effort and we don't really make this a priority, it's easy to lose these stories from generation to generation. So it's so meaningful to not only gather the stuff, but organize it, arrange it, turning it into a book. I've worked on probably half a dozen to a dozen family legacy projects as books. And each time the people I've worked with have been so moved by what we've uncovered, by what we've documented, by what we've preserved. They know that this story is just available. It's readily available for anybody, and it's something we can all learn from. It's one thing to gather the stuff, it's another thing to really package it. So you really need to think about what story you're telling. How are you arranging the story? Whose story are you telling? Who are the key people? What does the earlier struggle tell us about the later successes? What do the ups and downs tell us? What do we learn from this family story? This isn't just about documenting, it's about learning something. It's about preserving. It's about ensuring that this story resonates and carries forward, that it means something, so the future generations can really, just be moved by it and be inspired by it and know a little bit more about where they came from. If you are interested in learning more about how to leave a legacy for your family, and you're thinking about writing a book, and you're thinking about preserving all these family stories into book form, I'd love for you to talk to me about it. You can find me at goodbookhelp.com. You can click the link below. Schedule a one-on-one strategy call with me, completely free. I would love to talk. I would love to offer some insight and guidance and just learn more about your story and your family story. Remember, a good book can change your life. I'm Dan Good. Thanks for watching.